Namaste and welcome, everyone. I'm Dana Saray, co-founder of Hanuman Academy, and so excited to be here with you for the Yoga and Self-Mastery Summit. And today I have the great honor of interviewing Ananda Yogiji. Ananda was with us at Hanuman Festival recently and really shared so much magic through his music and teaching and Kirtanika dance party. It was so fun. And so really grateful to have you here with us today, Ananda. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, pleasure.
So we're cultivating the deeper dimensions of practice and really kind of looking into this concept of yoga as a path of self-realization or self-mastery. What does that mean to you? What does that concept of self-mastery mean to you?
Self-mastery. I think in my own journey, it has been a journey of really finding that sustained bliss, contentment, connection, and love, just like as much as possible. And I think that is at the root of what yoga is all about. And so for me, that's been my journey of like, okay, what was my life like before yoga, before I was practicing yoga? Where is my life? How has it evolved over the years that I've been doing yoga and the different practices that I've been doing yoga? And then, what I find is it just gets more and more subtle, and then at the same time, more and more in your face. Because on the one hand, I think as we attune ourselves more and more to what is bringing us this actually true contentment, this long lasting bliss and peace and joy in our life, and the love that's just like overwhelms us, that's not associated with the external world. Although of course we are in this, constant play of the inner and outer worlds, but how do we actually sustain that within ourselves so that when we wake up every morning, and we go to bed at night, and we're, going to we're assessing our lives when our subconscious wants to just dump whatever has been like being processed, and saying like, okay, how did I do today? How did I do, last week? How have I been doing? And where am I at now? And what's really working for me now, and what's not working for me now. And I think that's it. It's just like this constant reassessment of our journey, and what's really at the root of that, and what's going to make the biggest difference. What's really making the biggest difference for us in my own journey. And I think when I say that it becomes more and more in your face, it's because I think as we tune in more, we're listening more in different ways. Maybe we're becoming a little bit more shamanic. I just had my own experience like last night, having like all these vultures fly by. And at first it was just like, oh, that's cool. There's just a lot of vultures flying by, that's great. And this morning I was in my yoga practice, and I was like, no, I need to look up what vulture medicine really is about. And, of course I read about vulture medicine, and it was like the perfect teaching for me right now. It's like my tarot card for the day, or was it the coyotes that were howling when I knew that there was something that I probably shouldn't have been doing, or it was trickster medicine that I've, so then that's the like shamanic side. And then of course, just on the yogic side and your internal journey of just, the constant push and pulls of listening to how is my heart now? Like, where is my heart? Where is my mind in relation to my heart? Where's my ego in relation to my heart? How am I feeling? Like, how am I, here I am now. How am I doing now? Am I like kind of failing the test, or am I succeeding?
Yeah.
And I think that's a huge part of the path of yoga too, is like, a surrendering to the failures and mess ups, and then how to essentially realign and shift things, forgive, surrender, make the offering of just like acceptance, humanness of our journey. And it's almost like, oh wow, it's like I was just set up to make that mistake. I was just set up to like get upset or angry or hurt or you know, all these things, that because they make us self-reflect, they make us go into our journey, and then taking it to another perspective I think at a higher consciousness of like, okay, spirit, God, you know, creator, like, I'm hearing you. I'm hearing these lessons, and because I'm being challenged, or because I'm in so much joy, I'm in so much love, I'm going to give my gratitude. I'm going to give my connection to you. Like, oh God, it feels, thank you.
Wow. So yeah, so I'm hearing you say just a lot of self-inquiry, a lot of reflection on where you're at every day, returning to the practice, returning to looking at kind of how you're doing, looking into your heart. It's really beautiful. So that constant, continual return over and over again to that question. Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, I was blessed by the first yoga I ever did, and the one that's had the most influence in my life has been Kundalini Yoga, as taught by Yogi Bhajan. And, you know, he had such an emphasis on sadhana. And, you know, he's just like, every day, you know, you do not ever miss a day, you know, and you get up in the morning and you always do sadhana. It's like the first thing, you dedicate your life to sadhana and everything else will change. Your whole life will change. And that's just stuck with me. And I've been 11 years doing sadhana just about every day. You know, it's very rare that I miss a day, and I usually do it, you know, anywhere, like, typically it's average probably around like 2 hours, but anywhere from an hour to 3 hours, 4 hours. And just to, like, depending on the day, depending on how much I need in my my own process, because some days are more challenging than others. Some days we're a little bit lighter, and we can just kind of you know, feel like, okay, we, you know, don't have to do as much internal journey. But on average, you know, that was what Yogi Bhajan taught, was he said, look, give 10% of your day to God, to self-mastery, essentially. And that is, you know, about 2 to 2.5 hours of sadhana, right? 2 hours.
Yeah. And your particular sadhana involves a lot of chanting, yeah? A lot of mantra?
Yeah, it's interesting. Actually, my own personal sadhana it goes in different phases. I typically do about an hour of like physical yoga, asanas, kriyas kind of thing. And then about an hour of meditations. And what's been beautiful is that I have had a long-standing musical practice in general. And of course, for the last, you know, whatever, 8 or 9 years, it's been heavily mantra influenced, bhakti influenced, the practice of devotional through these chants and through English chants as well. And I guess I've always kind of seen the devotion, the bhakti portion of it, is like the icing on the cake. You know, it's like the celebration and the offering. It's just like, I just get to be with you, you know, like through my voice, through my love, and through my connection and presence, I just get to be in that, you know, with the, you know, the bhakti, the prema, the Ananda bliss. And you definitely can use mantra as a practice. And a lot of times I have had used mantra as a practice, more like, you know, japa style, like more reciting the mantras. And of course also through music. And yeah, and so of course I've done a lot of music with mantra.
Yeah. So your personal practice oftentimes, at least these days, is a lot of kriya, asana, meditation, a little bit of bhakti, maybe mantra. It sounds like as that sort of like nectar,
Well, here's the
deliciousness.
deal. I find that if you polish the mirror, the bhakti is very easy to flow through, you know? And if you don't polish the mirror, then I will find that, like, say I'll be chanting, maybe I'll do a chanting practice, but maybe if I've got too much on my mind, you know, or there's some funky stuff in my body or whatever it is, my emotions are all whacked out. Like, I'm not going to be present for the devotional offering. So, and I can't really stand that. Like, I'm just like, oh God, I can't be chanting and not be present. You know, like, it's kind of contrary. And a lot of times I can work through it. But what I find is, like, if have already done my sadhana, the ability for me to stay present and just like offer that is so much more available to me.
So sadhana is kind of the purification, clearing away, like you talked about, the subconscious dumping. I mean, can you say a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think it's the whole spectrum, really, because sadhana to me is really the practice of aligning the body, the mind, the aura, the energy, the emotional body, you know, the mind, the spirit, to just have this beautiful flow, you know, ultimately, and be an open receptacle for intuition, for creativity. You know, a lot of times the yogis talk about the kundalini rising from, you know, the base of the spine and expressing itself infinitely and creatively through each of your chakras to develop your, you know, express through your conscious centers, and then to receive the guidance through the intuition and through the crown of just like of all perceiving, all knowing, all oneness. And so it's like this balance that we're trying to attain of, like, okay, here we are, we're in these human bodies, you know, dealing with the human stuff, and yet we're spirit. We have the potential to live in our full divinity in this life. And we're constantly at the powers that be that are pulling and pushing. And so it's actually our discipline, that's our sadhana, to come back to our divinity and to just re-establish it, re-remember it, reunite with it.
Beautiful. Wow. Yeah. So every day, sadhana, discipline, so that off the mat, maybe you can bring that into your life. Can you talk about how that experience for you?
Yes, that's probably the most important, the off the mat. The off the mat, I feel, is I think at this point in my life, I'm just noticing it's like, how much presence and love am I carrying into the world through my actions and through my through just the space that I'm holding. Like, I think as I've gotten older and just more attuned to what's happening, it's like, what's the space that I'm holding? What's my energetic field that I'm holding? Because now I notice that, like, I'll just be in the presence of certain people and it'll just shift the way they're gonna be. Shift the things they're gonna say. And if I'm in a place of really holding a lot of deep presence and love, that's what's going to be reflected to me for the most part. Of course, there's going to be challenges, you know.
So there's a way that you hold your energy differently after sadhana that affects others in the world as well as yourself. Yeah, there's like a magnetic field that sort of calls forth something that might be different otherwise.
Yeah, Yogi Bhajan talked a lot about how, you know, the aura and the mind are really constantly at play, and the subconscious especially too. And that if you have this bunch of stuff in your subconscious that's projecting out into your aura, you know, your aura is a gigantic magnetic field, essentially. And that can attract really amazing, beautiful things if you're clear, and you're going to be able to attract all sorts of successful stuff and the right people for your journey to unfold, or, you know, along the lines of trauma and abuse, those can also be projected out and just keep playing out, and you can keep attracting those things.
Yeah.
And that was a huge emphasis for Yogi Bhajan. He dealt with a lot with addiction as well. I mean, that was a huge part of his emphasis. He's like, you have to change the psychology. You have to change your brain waves. You have to change your aura so that you're not constantly attracting that in.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a huge part of sadhana. Like, how do I clear out my aura every day,
Mm-hmm.
so that I, you know, can go out into the world and be clear? And that's a huge part of why I said, like, why do you do sadhana in the morning? So that you start your life here, you know, and not like wherever you're going to wake up. Because sometimes you wake up and you're here, you know, you wake up, you're here. But sometimes you wake up and you're like, wait, and you're in your muck of your mind, muck of your subconscious stuff that's, you know, been playing out. And are you going to start your day like that and go out into the world with, you're still processing that? Or are you going to attempt to go into your yoga practice and do the clearing, get to a place of loving acceptance, forgiveness, surrender, all these things, and then go out into the world?
Yeah. Much more powerful way to go out into the world and live your life.
Yeah. That's what I found anyways.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah.
So will you share a little bit more about your mantra music? And, you know, I know you perform a lot, and I'm really hearing that's a lot of that bhakti behind that, just being in the pure devotional space. And can you talk about that, about that offering and why you share that with the world?
Yeah. Well, I started with Kundalini Yoga again because there's such a huge emphasis on mantra in that tradition. And so I already had a big start with mantra practice, and it's kind of imbued within the yoga practice a lot of times. And then when I met Jaya Lakshmi, who I've been doing music with for the last 6 years, we really met each other in the more of the realms of kind of the Vedic bhakti, which includes the deities and chanting to the deities as well. And up until that point, I hadn't really done that. Actually, it was more like focused in the Kundalini yoga tradition, which has their own mantras and has more emphasis on the Sikh lineage. Mm-hmm. So when we met, we kind of ended up fusing together, and you know, she was doing Kundalini yoga with me, and then I was doing bhakti practices with her. And so pretty soon we kind of had created this unique fusion, which hardly any other artists have really gone in those realms to that degree. Mm-hmm. But we just felt like it was a pretty natural opening, essentially, to do that. And because there was kind of a fresh love right at that time, it was just like, you know, of course, let's embrace each other, embrace our practices. And, mm-hmm. You know, mm-hmm. And so it's been really sweet. And then that just really opened up a whole other practices of bhakti, of chanting to deities and that path. So I learned a lot more about the deities, what they represented, their mantras. And then I would just like practice their mantras. Sometimes I would just like recite the japa style. Sometimes I would sing to them. A lot of times I just sing to them. And it's a cultivation. It's a practice. Bhakti in itself is a sadhana. And the more you practice it, the more you open to it. Just like love, it's just like any kind of relationship. And it's like, I always kind of joke with the classic example of like how the Christians always say, like, how is your relationship with Christ, you know? Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, how's your relationship with Ganesh? How's your relationship with Krishna? How's your relationship with whatever, one of the Sikh gurus or something, you know? How was your relationship with Guru? And so it's a practice of opening and offering. And as you offer, you will receive, and then you'll receive these, you know, however it comes, you know, is it a little message, or do you have a vision, or do you have just a surge of certain feelings, bliss, love, whatever it is. And then it's up to us to become more and more subtle in our awareness of how the deities or, the mantra is affecting us at a physical, emotional, psychological, energetic level and spiritual level.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a refinement. It's all a refinement. And it's a never ending refinement.
Mm-hmm.
That is the beauty of yoga, because it continues to blossom in your life. And just when you think, oh, well, where am I at with my yoga class? Boom, a whole new thing opens up for you.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of things I tell my students a lot in classes, it's like, look, the Dalai Lama does like 6 hours of sadhana a day. Amma does sadhana, like Yogi Bhajan did sadhana, so it's like, you don't ever stop doing sadhana. Yogananda never stopped doing sadhana. Like, it never ends, even for the masters. They just want to do more. And then their life becomes sadhana.
Yeah.
And that's where we're really trying to get to as yogis, is like, you start practicing, and then how is it that your whole life becomes your sadhana? And sometimes that means your whole life is going to change. You might change jobs, you might change friendships or whatever. Or it might mean you keep the same thing, but the way you perceive it and the presence that you hold with it completely changes. And all of a sudden you're like, wow, I'm actually living a spiritual life in this mundane world that maybe before I just thought it was kind of blasé. And now more and more I cultivate this, more and more I can receive spiritual teachings within every moment, within every word, every sound of the, that I hear, like what animals come across me, like all these little things are the messages I see on a TV screen all of a sudden, or whatever it may be. And you're just more and more vigilant.
It's like you're open to the miracle that is always happening around you.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yes.
You have the ability to perceive it now.
Totally.
Yeah, I love that. I can't remember where this quote comes from, but that enlightenment really is the beginning of life. It's not actually the end goal. It's really the beginning where we start actually living fully awake and present. And that really feels like what you're talking about. Life becomes sadhana. Yeah. Beautiful. Yum.
Totally.
Well, Ananda, is there any final kind of words of wisdom around yoga today in this day and age, self-mastery, that it's just in your heart that you'd really like the yoga community to grok? I love that word, grok, to really get, embody, and really understand. Any final words of wisdom?
I think for me, my journey has been get into the box, learn in the box, but don't be confined by the box. And be open to whatever spirit wants to guide you to. And sometimes that means a lifetime of dedication in a box, in a certain tradition, whatever it is. And then sometimes it's like, you have to allow your spirit to find other forms and teachers to just help you grow on your way. And only the individual soul can know that. And you have to listen to your intuition and guidance. But for my journey, that's what it's been. It's like allowing for a freedom to explore. To explore and to be open. But be dedicated. I don't think there's you don't have any room to like budge. You have to be dedicated. But be open. Yeah.
I like that, like effort, and then surrender, right?
Always a lot of surrendering. Always a lot of surrendering.
Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you so much for your time today. Really super beautiful. And we really have appreciated, getting to know you deeper and having you at Hanuman Festival this year and sharing your music and your heart and so much magic with our community. So thank you for being a part of the Yoga and Self-Mastery Summit. And yeah, look forward to more as the opportunities arise. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Namaste.
Namaste. Satnam.